Welcome to our discussion on the latest in political strategy and global alliances. There's a recent episode featuring Dave Smith with Colin Douglas MacGregor that really digs into the complexities of international power plays, especially focusing on issues like a potential Venezuelan regime change war and the historical tie between America and Israel.
Right? I've been following that. So, what really stands out is the idea that a possible shift in Venezuela isn't just a local upheaval, but something that might, alter strategic interests globally, correct?
Absolutely. It's a layered analysis. Colin MacGregor lays out how a regime change in Venezuela could really have broad consequences, not just for the region, but for American foreign policy itself. It's like, in one view, it's a warning bell for emerging conflicts.
And it really makes you think about who's really orchestrating these moves on the international stage, Who's behind the curtain?
Exactly. It's that idea of hidden maneuvering. And juxtaposed with that is the discussion on how America's relationship with Israel, something built over many decades, serves as a sort of anchor in foreign policy debates.
Right. Yeah, the historic alliance between the US and Israel adds a deep strategic element, but it also carries emotional and ideological weight. It's almost like a bond that's more than just politics, right?
Right. It's not simply a transactional arrangement. It's built on shared values and long-standing regional strategies. And the conversation hints that this enduring relationship might be seen as a benchmark against which other international moves, like those in Venezuela, can be measured.
Exactly. But then, how do you see the tone of the discussion? It sometimes strikes me as a bit alarmist when talking about the potential for conflict. What do you think?
That's a good point. It walks a fine line. On one hand, Colin MacGregor is sounding a genuine alarm about the risks. On the other, it's also a critique of the, current state of foreign policy strategy. It's like, while the threat might appear dramatic, it urges us to consider the underlying dynamics that can't be ignored.
And then there's Dave Smith himself, blending his background in stand-up comedy with serious political commentary. That mix is a really intriguing way to make tough topics more approachable for listeners.
Absolutely. It's that blend of humor and incisiveness that makes the debate accessible. It's like you're getting a dose of reality mixed with a well-timed laugh that keeps you engaged while you tackle these heavy issues.
And that approach shines especially when the discussion touches on domestic influences on international policy. It's not just about what's happening abroad, it's also about how our own political narratives back home shape these big moves.
Exactly. The episode doesn't treat global affairs as detached abstractions. It hints that domestic politics and international strategies are two sides of the same coin. It's like each policy decision casts a ripple back home.
Yeah, that ripple effect is something I find particularly compelling. But honestly, do you think that sometimes, in focusing on these sweeping narratives, there's a risk of oversimplifying the real, complex history of these alliances?
I see what you mean. It might come off, at times, as though the narrative was a bit too streamlined, throwing emphasis on tradition and long-held bonds without fully exploring how those alliances could evolve. But on the whole, I think it's a deliberate choice to highlight the urgency of the moment.
Sure, but I'd argue that an even deeper dive into how those alliances have adapted over time might give a more comprehensive picture. Instead of just pointing to an unchanging bond, acknowledging evolution could offer more nuance.
That's a valid critique, and I appreciate that perspective. It's like saying, yes, this alliance is crucial, but let's not forget time changes things. Even then, the overall framing here emphasizes that while evolution is natural, some historical ties remain remarkably resilient.
Absolutely. And what about the part on Venezuela? It's presented almost as a ticking time bomb, a potential trigger for larger conflicts. Do you buy into that idea?
Well, it's compelling to think of it as a strategic fulcrum. The idea is that a disruption in Venezuela might not just be a regional hiccup, but could cascade into far-reaching consequences. It sets off a chain reaction in the geopolitical arena.
Right. But isn't there a chance it could also be overhyped for effect? I mean, sometimes warnings like these risk creating more anxiety than actionable insight.
True, and that's where the balance comes in. On one hand, the potential consequences are real enough to merit discussion. On the other, the approach can sometimes tip into alarmist territory. It's a tricky balancing act between drawing attention and not stirring unnecessary panic.
Yeah, and that makes you appreciate the role of a platform like this, where humor and critical commentary mix to um, actually engage the audience without losing the discussion's depth.
Exactly. And let's not overlook the impact of the show's delivery. Dave Smith's style brings a wit that helps peel back the layers of what might otherwise be a very dense analysis. It keeps it fast paced and engaging.
Yes, the delivery definitely makes the big picture more digestible. It's almost like learning something vital, but in a way that doesn't feel like a heavy lecture, you know?
Precisely. And it's that conversational, sometimes cheeky tone that brings listeners back. It's relatable because it manages to address complex issues, like the ever evolving domestic and international policies, with an honest, unpretentious approach.
And I really appreciate that human element. Politics often comes off as so detached, and this approach grounds it in real world impact while also keeping us thinking critically.
Exactly, it's like that intricate dance between humor and grave real world consequences. The episode asks us to consider not merely the form of alliances and conflicts, but the substance behind them and their long term ramifications.
Right. And speaking of long term ramifications, the focus on America's strategic bond with Israel really underscores the historical continuity of policy, a constant amidst change. It's almost like a guiding North Star for how decisions are made.
Totally. And that historical narrative isn't just thrown out there for effect. It's used to challenge listeners to ponder why some relationships, even when tested by time and changing circumstances, remain so pivotal. It's almost like the rock solid foundation of numerous policy decisions.
That's well put. It does seem, though, that while that foundation is significant, sometimes the conversation doesn't fully acknowledge how both these long term alliances and emerging threats are in a state of constant evolution. Wouldn't you say?
I get that, absolutely. And while the emphasis here is strongly on the historic and enduring elements, there is room to argue for a more dynamic understanding of these ties. It's an ongoing debate how to respect tradition without letting it blind us to contemporary shifts.
Yeah. And that tension is exactly what makes these discussions so fascinating. It's not just about taking a stance, but challenging it in the process.
Exactly. It leaves listeners with a reflective space to consider what parts of our foreign policy need to be re examined and what parts continue to deliver strength. It's a call to balance urgency with critical thinking.
Right. So, in wrapping this up, it really sounds like the episode is urging us to look deeper, whether it's about the potential flashpoints in Venezuela or the enduring yet evolving US Israel relationship, and to question how these dynamics shape broader global policies.
Yes, indeed. And it simultaneously challenges us to appreciate the complexities while remaining alert to change. That blend of humor, candid critique, and thorough analysis makes the conversation not only engaging, but also a vital reminder to stay critically involved in understanding our world.